So what are you going to start with, Walter?
Well, Stephanie, this month, for my Christmas picks, I'm starting off with a beautiful novel called Hunte and Emil by Belinda. This is such a great book. It's a lovely, romantic, sort of fun read, but it's also got a lot of history. It's got a little bit of politics. It taught me quite a few things, and it's actually a beautiful love story based on the author's own family history. So it's such an intriguing, it all starts out in Nazi Germany, and it goes to England, it goes to Australia, it goes to Africa, it goes all across the world, and it's the most extraordinary story, made all the more extraordinary because it's real.
And told from the perspective of Hannah and Emil, or?
Well, it's quite novel in that way. It's told from Hannah's perspective, but then it breaks into a sort of a third-person view of Emil. So it's a very, very interesting narrative process.
And you love both characters?
I love both characters, and I thought it was a tremendous read. It's really fun. I think it's a perfect holiday read. It's the sort of thing that you'll get really involved in, and it's a beautiful story, and you'll learn a little bit from it as well.
Oh, I look forward to it. And what's your next one?
Well, the next one I've picked is The Little Book of Everyday Miracles by Sharon Snir. This is one of those books. It's filled with little chapters of true stories which illustrate the place of miracles in our lives. And I'm one of those people that thinks we've lost sight of the miraculous in so many ways. We're always looking for a reason behind something. And Sharon's beautiful book is one of those books you read with a constant smile on your face, because it's just these amazing moments of synchronicity, of sometimes inexplicable occurrences, but sometimes things that are perfectly explainable and yet are magical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And magical when you pay attention to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's about meeting people by chance, but also by transforming your life, by paying attention to things, by choosing to walk a different road. Sharon writes beautifully, and she's collected these anecdotes from her friends, some from books, some from her own experiences. It's a beautiful book to give to someone because it's just so delightful. It's so delightful. Honestly, I was smiling the whole time I read it.
Now, this is a book that I have read, and one of the things that I think Sharon Snir does very well is that she somehow avoids the traps of sentimentality.
Absolutely.
It would be so easy for the Little Book of Everyday Miracles to be sentimental, and it is not. She's a wise woman. She's not a sentimental woman. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely key. Yeah, there's nothing schmelzy at all about it.
No,
yeah,
no.
It's beautifully evoked and very, very accessibly written. I think it's lovely, and I'm saying in fact, I am giving copies of it away to friends.
Excellent, excellent. And what's your third choice?
Well, my third choice is a book that you might know about. It's The Moon Shines Out of the Dark by one Stephanie Dowrick. It's a beautiful children's book, beautifully illustrated children's book, which congratulations on.
Thank you.
I just think it's beautiful, and it's such a lovely story for children. I think we're always looking for a really good children's book this time of year.
Yeah.
And this is one which has, I think, a really clear moral and a really clear sort of conscience, but at the same time it's beautifully, and it's magical to read to children, and the illustrations are wonderful. I know you've found someone who's just brilliant, and this is one of my favourites. Have a look at that.
That is one of my favourites too.
Yeah,
and actually, as Spavilas, you know, it doesn't always go easily together that one person writes the story and another person illustrates it. But I felt that this illustrator was the perfect illustrator for my story, and particularly for my character, Harry. The first of my choices is one that's really special to me. It's called Prayers of a Young Poet, and the prayer poems, really, were written by Rainer Maria Rilke as a very young man, and they have never been published in this form, more or less as he intended them. And I'm so drawn to this book, partly because it is Rilke, and you know, Walter, and some of the people watching this will also know that I've written my own book on Rilke in the company of Rilke, and I spent 5 or 6 years in the company of Rilke doing that. Yeah. And some of the most beautiful poems in my own book were translated by Mark Burroughs, and his feeling for language is quite exceptional. His feeling for German, his feeling for English, and his feeling for the kind of poetic message that comes through. Not all poetry has a poetic message. Not all poetry invites us to see the world through the eyes of a poet. So that's very special, Prayers of a Young Poet. The second of my choices is a book that has been out for a few years, and I'm not wild about the title. There Where the Pepper Grows doesn't draw me in, but what did draw me in and what kept me reading with great interest, so much so that I was like this, not wanting to do anything else but read this book, by an Australian writer, Belinda. This is a book maybe a little bit like your Hannah and Emil, which starts off in Poland during the time of the Nazi uprising and occupation. And it's about some Jewish people who have to leave Poland. They go first to Japan. Of course, leaving Poland itself is so dramatic and so difficult. They go first to Japan, and then they end up in Calcutta. They were intending to go to Palestine, but they end up in Calcutta. And one of the reasons that I was so fascinated by this novel is that it tells us a great deal about the Sephardic Jewish experience as well as the Ashkenazi Jewish experience and the Baghdadi Jewish experience, all taking place in this sort of potent cradle that is Calcutta. More of the novel is set in Poland and leaving Poland, but I particularly loved the sections that were set in India. So this is a tremendous novel to read, There Where the Pepper Grows by Belinda, who is an Indian-Australian writer and definitely somebody to find and to follow up. I followed up with her earlier novel too, The Seduction of Silence, but I won't talk about that this time. I'll talk about that another time.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And how amazing that both of us, you know, with Hannah and Emil and There Where the Pepper Grows, chose something fairly similar.
It's that same period of time.
Same period of time, but probably very, very different perspectives.
Yes.
And of course, the Indian perspective in There Where the Pepper Grows is quite unique to this book. A very powerful, very compelling. This book really spoke to me. Now, Barbara Kingsolver is already a favourite of mine. She wrote Poisonwood Bible, which I think is one of my top 10 novels of all time.
It's one of those books that I bought when I went on holiday, and I never went out of my hotel room because I wanted to finish it.
Well, it will be the same for you. Don't waste your money on a hotel room. Just buy Flight Behaviour and read it at home. Yeah. Because you won't want to go anywhere else. But the strange thing is that I picked this novel up several times and couldn't get past the first couple of pages. And I was so surprised by that because, you know, I was so prepped to love it. And I asked somebody else who'd read it, did you love this novel? And she said, it is extraordinary. So I went past those first couple of pages and I see that she wasn't really asking too much of us. She is just setting up a novel which works at a slightly different pace from most novels, most conventional novels, but the story that pours out is so extraordinary. And it focuses on the monarch butterfly. Wow. And the monarch butterfly, in their millions, used to and usually does nest and restore itself and regenerate in Mexico. And because of the weather changes that there have been, because of, you know, climate warming and so on, these monarch butterflies end up in a very poor part of the United States in Tennessee. So what Barbara Kingsolver does through the most extraordinarily compelling, utterly believable characters is also give us this incredible view of what we are doing and to an extent what we must do in order to resolve our relationship and heal our relationship with the earth, on which the monarch butterfly depends, but so do we. And there is this quite stunning image that occurs fairly late in the book that came from Mexico originally, and it is that the monarch butterfly, which in all its beauty and radiance represents the souls of babies who haven't lived. Each butterfly beats its wings, as it were, for the soul of the babies that haven't lived. And what an image, you know, that we could be, through our behaviours, depriving future generations of the right to live in all their glory and all their beauty and really to experience the wonder of this universe. And none of this is laid on with a heavy hand. It's told in a way that is so compelling and therefore so irresistible.
Yeah.
Flight behaviour.